They didn't have water, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have phones, they didn't have cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
You would just come out to your property, and that was it.
This is the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, 30-minute conversations with women who have found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 158. Find out more about the podcast at desertladydiaries.com or engage with guests, listeners, and me on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries.
Mary Helen Tuttle was born and raised in Saugerties, New York, a classic small town on the banks of the Hudson River in the Catskill Mountains. Mary Helen had a long career in purchasing and moved to California with her husband Steve in 1990. They landed in Fontana while Steve was working on completing the geodesic dome he'd planted in North Joshua Tree. Mary Helen represented North Joshua Tree on the Municipal Advisory Council for 8 years and has been a long-term active volunteer with the Copper Mountain Mesa Association. She is also a longtime member of the Joshua Tree Rotary and currently works around town as a professional part-timer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dawn. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you. It's very exciting. What was your first experience with the desert?
Well, having grown up in the Catskill Mountains, all pine trees and green trees, my husband came out and I decided to come with him. Steve was working for IBM and he came out for a vacation, so I came with him just to see what was going on. And we came out to the desert because he wanted to show me this dome. And I thought it was really kind of novel. As he was building it, there was no electricity, there was no water. And he had a little 60 DeVille camper in the backyard that we stayed in. And to me, it was all kind of fun and cute. And of course, you know, I was in my early 30s and everything was...
In love.
In love. I mean, love, lust, everything. It was very cool to me, you know? So not long after that, Steve and I decided to move from New York out here. Steve had already had the place in Fontana, so I moved to Fontana. So I lived in the same place for 30 years, so I knew everybody, knew everything, and I was queen of my own little world. Well, then you put me in Fontana, and I don't know nothing from nothing, obviously. So it was a transition, and it was okay. I made my way, and if anybody ever emails me, when I reply, you see it says bloom where you're planted. Well, I learned that the hard way, and I believe in that totally. It's not going to come knocking on your door. You have to go out after relationships. You have to go out looking for people, like-minded people that you're able to communicate with, so you're not all alone.
Yeah, totally. I've moved myself a couple times from Jersey to Charlotte to Cleveland to Orlando, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
And people aren't going to come on your door and say, "Hey neighbor, how are you?" No,
Right.
You're actually the one that has to start with a wave or a smile, or you have to talk to the weirdo in the grocery store, but you know, that could be a very cool weirdo. It might be a good idea.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So he's building this dome out here. When was the decision made, like, okay, we are permanently moving to the dome in the desert?
Well, he started the dome with his first wife, and then they got divorced, and then he had a girlfriend who worked on it as well. So I was the third woman, and I was the last. And when it got to the point that we could come together on the weekends, I could actually work on it as well. He did the rough carpentry, he would put in the piping, the electric, he did all that stuff. I couldn't do anything. But then once it got to where he was putting up the drywall, I learned how to do the mud. So I did that. The mudding and the taping and the sanding, and I swear I'll never do it again for love nor money.
It's a lot.
I'm just going to write a check and put my purse in my hand and walk out the door.
Right.
So when it got to the point where I had retired, I had found a job that I really liked in Ontario, and I was there 5 years, and we decided that it was getting to be time to move to the desert full time. It was originally just going to be a weekend pad. Well, no, we ended up moving full time, and we moved in October of 2000. We had worked on it since I had worked on it with him since 1990.
Wow.
So when we moved in full time, I did not want to move in until the walls were done and the carpet was down, because I can make things look pretty nice half-assed, you know? So the only thing that needed to be done when we moved in was more on the outside, and I think the laundry room needed to be finished as well as the office area because Steve worked from home. So the last year before we moved in, he was out here working full-time from home, and then I would drive back and I would come out for a couple of days and do a bunch of stuff, and then I would take me and the dirty laundry and the dog and go back to our place in Fontana and mow the lawn and do the laundry, and then go to Home Depot. And I'm telling you, my Home Depot card was more dear to me than my Nordstrom's card. So I would go and get the supplies for the next bit that we were getting ready to do, and then picking the colors and picking the formica and the flooring and finding vendors out here that we could buy the stuff from because it was local. A local guy did our cabinets, a local guy did the floor. Everything that we didn't do, a local did. So that was really important to me. So that's what we did. So October of 2000 was full-time, and then we would reverse it, and we spent about 2 months going back and forth to Fontana, getting that place ready to sell. And then that sold, and then we came, and we were in the desert, so that was it. So I'd been coming back and forth for 10 years, so since 1990, and then we moved full-time in 2000. It's been 20, yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah. How did he find that property, and what was his attraction to being in the desert?
Well, one of his first jobs, his boss had a place out here, and they dirt biked. And he remembers coming out to the area, coming up 62. There was only one light in Yucca, and that was at 247 in the highway. And then the next light was in Joshua Tree, and that was it. And there was no Home Depot. As a matter of fact, when we were coming out, we used to stop at the Home Depot in San Bernardino, and he would know the project that he wanted to complete, and he would have a list of materials. So on our way out, we would stop at the Home Depot, get all the stuff we needed. We drove a 65 Ford flatbed. And yeah, we did, and had no air conditioning, so in the summertime, we only came out at night because it was cooler, and it was him and me and the dog was this prissy thing who had to sit in between us, didn't like me sitting by him. That's okay, so we would come out with all that stuff and unload it, and he came out, he was dirt biking, and his mother had retired from her work in Monrovia, and she was looking for a place, and this guy's mother had died, and had this cool little place that was all fenced in over on Lyrco, and Steve's mom loved it, and she just had to haul her own water. And out in our area there is a community well, and you have to get a share, and there's a big long history to that, but she was very happy. So Steve would come out and help her with the property, and then he saw where our property is right now. So our 5 acres, imagine this, he bought this in 1988.
Whoa.
5 acres, $800 an acre.
And I just got a Zillow, I get a Zillow report like once a month that says what the property is doing in Joshua Tree, and homes are selling for $359,000, and there's 300 of them on the market, which is crazy.
Correct. So, he had to do a lot of work to it. We had to get electric. We only got city water in 1994.
Wow.
So that was very cool. And that same year, we had done enough to the structure, to the dome, that we were able to get electricity installed. So 94 was a banner year for us at Sun Ever Road. We got electric and water, and I was living high on the hog.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. So you're, in love with this guy. He's got this place in the desert, and you're just coming along. Was there a moment when you were like, this is really cool. I really like the desert?
No.
Okay.
No, I shouldn't say no. That took a long time coming. I'm not going to lie to you. I really thought the desert sucked.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who, when I was working, I was in an office. I wore suits all the time and high heels, and everybody thought I was a manager when I was working out here, because here I am in my regular kind of work outfit. California does not dress the same as New York.
No,
I'm going to tell you that right now. So we were living here, and it grows on you. That's all I can say. So you have to make your way in order to like it. So at first, to me, all I knew about where I lived was work, work, work. Because he didn't know anybody, and there was really nothing to do. Go out to dinner. At the end of working hard all day on the dome, we'd look at each other, what do you want to do to eat? Well, I guess it's up to me to cook. And then on Winters Road, if I were there and I saw a car on Winters Road, I'd be like, oh, look.
There's people.
There's somebody. Do you know that person? Mary Helen, no, I don't know everybody, but everybody knew Steve because of his mom. His mom ingratiated herself in the area and got very involved in the area, so she would talk Steve into doing things, and then she would talk me into doing things, and that's how I kind of got to know more people in the desert. And of course, in our area at that time, people were stopping by all the time if they saw the gate open.
Right,
Oh,
what's
you're
going
the ones,
on?
You're building the dome. Oh, and you're Ruth's son. And you married Ruth's son, Steve. And where are you from? And I would meet people who said, I met this one woman who went to the same nursing school in Kingston, New York, as my mother did.
Oh, my goodness.
It was run by the Benedictine nuns, and that's where she got her RN, and my mother got her RN. They weren't in the same class, but it was like, that was kind of craziness, So
Right.
I got to know everybody sort of that way, and just being welcoming to people. And then after we moved in full time, and then I had a little more free time, I didn't have to work during the weekend and then go home and work during the week. So then I kind of found my way. I met some people and a friend, obviously up through the community center. I was doing things, but at that time the community center didn't need my help. Every time I would go up and say, oh, I can help in the kitchen or do this or that. Oh, no, honey, we have plenty of people. It's okay. All right, so that's okay.
It's kind of discouraging.
Yeah, that was like, really? You're saying no? It's
Right.
like, okay. And then a friend of mine introduced me to Rotary. And I had heard of Rotary because I knew it from my granddad in New York was a charter member of a Rotary club. So I was familiar, and I went to a couple of meetings, and I really liked the camaraderie. This was something that was just for me. My husband is okay. He's welcome to come. He can be a Rotary Andy, but this Rotary is me. It's mine. Mine.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. So that's why I kind of took to Rotary. I think it was my hand up to say, come on, I want to introduce you to everybody around. So that's how I met a lot of people through Rotary, got a lot of referrals, and I kind of just made my way that way.
Right. So talk about Rotary now in the community. What kind of things, and if someone's listening and think it's something that they might want to participate in.
Oh, yeah, that would
talk
be great.
Talk about.
Rotary International, there's the big Rotary International, and right now their claim to fame is they have just about eradicated polio. They are the ones that have taken the polio vaccine to all of the third world countries that have had wild polio. And they're a humanitarian organization for people who want to serve, and they want to serve your community, you want to serve the world, you just want it to be a better place. So my club, it's the Rotary Club of Joshua Tree, and we meet on Wednesdays at 7 a.m. at the college on Rotary Way. And there are a couple other clubs up here in the Morongo Basin. And my thought is this. So I'm one person, and I don't have a whole lot of money, and I don't have a whole lot of time, but my little bit of money and my little bit of time mixed with all the other Rotarians in the world, little bit of money, little bit of time, does really great things, and I just like being a part of that,
That's cool.
The Rotary Club of Joshua Tree, what we do is we help organize a food drive every spring, and we do it with the other clubs. I happen to be a co-chair of that event, and we restock the shelves of the local food pantries. And then in August, we do a shoe giveaway to kids so they have a brand new pair of shoes for the first day of school.
Nice.
And that is probably one of the most rewarding things ever. Yeah, there are parents who take advantage, and you just want to, but when you see a kid look at a pair of shoes on his feet and say, these are mine, I don't have to share them, it just breaks your heart. And you know what? I would buy them a pair of shoes.
Sure.
I can't stand to see a kid. I wasn't a needy kid. I really wasn't. I had all I could. I had clothes, I had food, I had a roof over my head. I didn't have concerns. It breaks my heart to think that a kid needs to worry about his parents and worry about health insurance or how they're going to pay the rent or
getting lunch at school
if they're going to eat that day.
Yeah.
A kid doesn't need to worry about stuff like that because they can't change any of it. So I have a soft spot for kids. No, I don't have any. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I really am. I really never felt that I was destined to have my own kids.
Yeah, same.
I have nieces and nephews. I've babysat all my life. I like kids. I like kids when they go home too, you know?
Yeah.
I like to talk to them. Part of the other things, one of the things I do for Rotary for my district is I'm co-chair of a camp every year, except for COVID year. I work with a team of about 60 folks, and we take 275 12-year-olds up to a camp in Crestline for overnight. And then I also help with a camp for 16-year-olds. We take them up for 2 nights. So, you know, seeing some of these kids away from their parents, they're good kids.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're a little wild, but you know, I'm a big chick, so once I look
You can
them in
round them up.
yeah, once I look in their face and say, "Hey, you and me, we're talking," and they're like, "All right," you know.
Yeah.
So I like kids. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
So
it.
if somebody were interested, do they just show up to 7 o'clock at, what is it?
They
at
can do
Bruce's?
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They can do that, or they can email me, mhtuttle50@gmail.com. They can, the Rotary Club, my Rotary Club has an email. It's jtrotary@yahoo.com.
Perfect.
They can even just Google it, and you'll find information on it. Rotary is it's a great organization, and they're there for the community, you know. And I'm a proud Rotarian. Obviously, I could talk forever about it, you know.
Well, and locally, you all also do some scholarship programs and highway cleanup too.
Yeah, so we earn money, you know, we get ourselves out there so people know who we are. The next project I want to work on is spiffing up the Welcome to Joshua Tree sign. And I know it's pretty controversial. I don't want to change it. I just think it looks kind of drab and could be fixed up a little bit, because I can't tell you how many people are taking pictures next to that sign. And wouldn't it be nice to see a sign that didn't have peeling paint? Joshua Tree is not a little schluppy place. It's a cool little place, and I want to be proud of it.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to the community center.
Okay, sure.
So at what point did you just say, okay, never mind, there'll come a time when I'm, you know, my skills are needed?
That time came pretty quick, let me
And
tell
why don't
you.
we just back up to like a little bit of the history of how that got built and how it got started.
Oh yeah. So if you're familiar with North Joshua Tree, or if not, it was back in I think it was in the 70s, the early 70s, is they had the Homestead Act, the 60s or the 70s.
Yeah, I think there were 2 different tracts.
Yeah,
there was the 160 acre, and then they reduced it to the 5 acre.
Yeah, something like that. So anyway, people were, at that time, they were retiring at 62. And right now I'm 62, and I mean, I am retired, but I can't imagine giving up my job all the way, you know? And so people had these properties, and they had homestead cabins, and that was it. They didn't have water, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have phones, they didn't have cell phones. You would just come out to your property, and that was it. Really and truly, there was about 200 to 300 people who were out there. Yeah, there were quite a few. And they at first started meeting at someone's house. So what they would do is like drive around and introduce themselves, and hey, we're going to have a community meeting. And so they would meet at someone's house, and they would say, okay, what's the first thing we want to get out here? We want to get electricity. Okay. They would then have an ad hoc committee to do electricity, and they would contact Edison and get electric wires brought out. So that's how they got electricity. Then they wanted to get water. So they decided they couldn't get Joshua Basin to put water out then. So what they did is they surveyed several properties, and they found one property that had it was lower in elevation, and it had a higher water table, and they all bought a share, which means if you got into the well, you had to buy a share for $300. And that $300 went into an account, and that paid for the digging of the well, the equipment in the well. They had to have water tanks and equipment in order to put the water into your vehicle or vessel, because then you were entitled to haul your own water. So there were all kinds of water trucks. Personally, we have, I think it's a 54 Beacons moving truck that Steve put a water tank on the back of it, and it's a 1,500 or 2,500 gallon tank. So people all during the day would go back and forth to the well and take the water. So that's how they initially got water. And they had their own rules and regulations, and they did become incorporated. So as they were going through all this, they said, well, you know what? We should just build a community center out here. And this one guy said, you know what? We should start with a fire station, and I own a metal building business. I don't know what you would call it, but he said, and I've got one I can donate. So he donated the metal building, and then somebody else said, well, you know what? I'll put money in to get the concrete poured. Now, of course, everything was a whole lot cheaper back then.
Sure.
But it was all donated labor and a lot of donated parts. And the way they got the property is BLM. They bought 3 parcels out in that area for $1,500 from BLM, but they didn't get title. We got what's called a land patent for the property. So we can't ever sell it. The only thing we can do is if the community center goes defunct, they can give it to another nonprofit who, according to our bylaws, help the environment. They're for the community. So like the property where the fire station is used to house a fire truck that was run by the county, and the county used to take care of it, but they stopped that a while ago. So we took it back. The community center itself was built way back when HUD would give you money. Now, if you want something, they're general contractors. They make it all happen. So there's some place, a file, and it still exists, where the drawings for the community center are on a napkin, and that's how they got their HUD money. And they flew a bunch of mucky mucks in from Sacramento to do the groundbreaking. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Senator Jerry Lewis, who unfortunately just passed, I think he was pretty influential in getting us what we got out there. So they would build something. There was an electrical contractor who donated all his time. So, you know, you go in the building there, and I'm telling you, it's haunted. All those old guys still walk around and say, well, why you got to do it this way, or we did it that way, or stuff like that. You know, I'm convinced of it. So the community center has a ton of history. And I think because of that, Steve and I and others in the area feel the same way. We want to continue it. You know, there's changes. Yes, there's the purpose of it is going to change, because after all, people can stay home now.
They can air conditioning with their electricity.
We got air conditioning now. We got air conditioning. But they can stay home with their computers and Zoom now and watch TV. They don't have to go out to bingo or
to socialize.
To a community dinner or something like that. But now, when we do have these community things out there, some of the younger set think it's cool as hell to come out to our community center and have an $8 or $9 breakfast, you know, which I think is going to be $10 coming up. But
there you go.
when we do,
you need a roof.
Exactly. When we do reopen, but now they think it's kind of cool to be out there. However, getting a lot of them to stay and help is another thing, you know. They like to be there, but that's okay if they just put money in our pockets. We'll try to take care of the rest of it.
There's people that have the time that will take on those projects.
So I think Steve and I got involved with the community center because of history, because his mother was big in the community center, and she would come over and say, oh, Steve, I need for you to help me do this, or can you do that? And Steve would do anything for his mother, so he would do that. And then I would tag along, and I remember the day, it was 2002 when I told the treasurer, I can help you do that. I can keep a checkbook. He gave me a big fat kiss and gave me this whole box of shit. Thank you. And I have been the treasurer since 2002.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he was so pleased. He was the treasurer for 14 years before that. Gosh. And the little lady before him had it for, I think, 10 or 12 years. So, you know, I don't know.
Carrying on the tradition.
I try to hand it off, but nobody wants it. And all it is just take in the mail. It's the old-fashioned stuff. Writing a check. I write like 4 checks a month to pay the bills. I keep the checkbook. I answer the mail. That's it. That's Copper Mountain Mesa Community Association.
So, do we have a scoop on when we might see it at breakfast? Or does it...
I'm hoping the plan is for Labor Day.
Okay.
But I got to tell you, I'm tired of bringing it up. We had thought we had a great idea and wanted to do renting out the kitchen, our commercial kitchen. We are, you've been there, Dawn.
Yes.
We're super proud of our kitchen. It's super clean. I love it. Well, we thought, we could share the kitchen because we always get an A, and maybe we can get a couple extra bucks this way.
Sure.
So this was 2 years ago. So in order to have somebody else use your kitchen and be approved to sell their product, they have to also have an inspection. We did not realize that the inspection for the renter was different than the inspection that we got because we were grandfathered in. Nothing changed. So this was going to be a change. They came up and ripped us apart. They wanted to shut us down. And we pleaded with them to please let us at least have the breakfasts so we could make some money. And then COVID happened. And we did get some grants, so we were able to buy some of the material. But for the most part, we had to make quite a few changes up there that were pretty pricey. Material-wise. So all of the labor is donated. And right now, there's 3 guys who want to work. And one of them's my husband. And he works part-time. So, on his day off, I want to nag him. Are you going to go up to the community center? I'm tired of fighting about it. If it gets done, it gets done. I don't know what else to say. You can't beat volunteers. You can only shoot them, right?
Yeah, right.
I don't want to do that neither. So, anyway, so we're hoping... They keep saying it'll get done really fast, but I guess I'm kind of worried about it. But it's a slacky thing to say, but it is what it is, and it'll get done when it gets done.
So, if people want to contribute to the community center, if they're either not from the area or they live in the area and they don't know how to do that, what's the best way for them to make a donation?
Probably right now, go to our website, which is cmmcommunitycenter.org. We are currently trying to in the process of opening a 501c3, which means we are a 501c4 and we have to be, as we're a community center. We're still a nonprofit. We still bring in under 15 grand a year, believe it or not. And when you donate to a 501c4, you can't take it off your taxes. But when you give to a 501c3, you can, and then we can give you a receipt and you put it in your tax folder. But I think you have to give 10 or 15 grand in order to, total throughout the year in order to have it a write-off on your taxes. So there are some people who have sold their homes, and they said, listen, if you guys get a 501c3 by the end of the year, I'd rather donate my money to you and use it as a write-off than give it to the federal government as short-term or capital gain, right? So, so we have another gal on the board is working on the 501c3, and hopefully we'll be able to get that. Then we can get some more donations, hopefully. And right now we just need for someone, now this is just me, and everybody will shake their head, we just need for somebody to organize what needs to be done up at the center as far as building goes, like what needs to be installed. The toilets need to be put back in, the partitions need to be put back in, piping needs to be put in to run gas for the new hot water heater. There's stuff that needs to be done, and I guess it sounds kind of funny, but I guess it's got to be guy shit because I don't know how to do it.
Me either.
Yeah, exactly. And I can say, okay, everybody up here on Thursday, let's do it. Well, volunteers don't like to be voluntold that Thursday you're going to be up here doing this. Maybe some of them do, but I did try that, and I don't know. I don't want to fight with my husband about stupid stuff like that. Yeah, right? Exactly. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, I want to thank you for being here today and for all of the service that you provide to this community, you and Steve both, since I have that opportunity to thank you and acknowledge that because it's a lot. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to select 2 little chips out of there. And if you're familiar with this part of the podcast, this is the Diary Unlocked portion, which is exclusive content for Patreon supporters of the podcast. So I'm going to ask Mary Helen 4 questions that she's randomly selected out of a jar. Yeah, they're on the other side. I'm frugal. questions I'm going to ask Mary Helen are, what was the last gift you gave someone? What was the first music you ever bought? How do you define generosity? And do you have a meditation or gratitude practice you'd like to share? So if you're listening and you want to hear Mary Helen's answers to those questions, go out to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and become a patron of the podcast. Mary Helen, thank you so much for being here today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
I have some shout-outs this week to Anya, New Dave, and Chris Stock. Thanks so much for following Desert Lady Diaries on SoundCloud. I appreciate you. And a shout-out to Toxie D. Thanks so much for signing up to receive the new episode newsletter. If you don't want to miss an episode of this podcast, sign up for the new episode newsletter like Toxie did. Go to desertladydiaries.com and click on newsletter. Thanks so much for listening.